Hi, and welcome back to The Money Honey, the show that puts female faces on the screen, celebrating the women in finance, property, and construction. I would like to say a warm thank you to everybody, absolutely everybody who has been truly supportive of the work that I've been doing online around Female Invest. I've got to give a shout out to my girls at Female Invest who have also been on the show. Actually, we've had a Female Invest employee come on the show, and they recently asked me to be one of their course speakers, to deliver one of their courses around mortgages and buying property. This was a phenomenal career highlight for me. Like, I just did not even think that was possible, because I'd recently seen Deborah Meaden of all people. She has also been approached by Female Invest. And Invest, what on earth is that? Female Invest. And she was asked to be a guest speaker for them, and she did something on there. So, when I was approached, I actually thought it was spam. I actually thought that I just genuinely thought it was a scam. I didn't think it was actually them. So yeah, if you missed it, if you're not a subscriber to Female Investor, not actually sponsors of the show, they're not, endorsing me for this, they're not paying me for this. It's just a genuine, helpful suggestion that this app really does help with as much knowledge and information around investing, finances, money, budgeting. It is worldwide. So wherever you are in the world, they are in 90 countries. I'm sure you'll be able to find a way to become a subscriber if you do want that kind of information and knowledge. But for today, that aside, I am interviewing another trailblazing entrepreneur, right? So I love highlighting female entrepreneurs, whether they are in marketing, property, finance, whatever part of the industry within the financial services, property and construction sector, whatever role they play in there. I really love highlighting women who are really putting themselves out there, because it takes a lot of guts. You know how brave I can be sometimes with certain posts. Dare I mention the Tina Turner latest? I know that's been a favorite number of many. I did regret it a little bit, but then I didn't, right? So when I saw the feedback and the response that people were giving, I thought, actually, do you know what? It's been received so positively, and it's made, people were saying, like, it's made my day. I haven't stopped laughing, and that's all it, that's what it's about. So I know what it takes for people like this Money Honey that's coming on the show today to put themselves out there. She put a post out recently to say that 14 months ago, she was not on LinkedIn. She was not visible. Her background is not within financial services. She actually started within the beauty industry. So she had a different perspective altogether, which is probably what has made her stand out in financial services. She used to manage a vacation rental property in Florida. I mean, why are you here? Like, what? Why would you leave Florida? Anyway, we'll find out from her. But yeah, she's been in the finance sector now. She sold her business and then came into financial services, and she's now a marketing manager for a company, for a lender called Winchester Corporate Finance. Right, so you may have heard of them before. So without teasing you any further, the guest on my show today is Hilary Lewis. I cannot wait to hear more about her. I cannot wait to finally have a full in-depth conversation that isn't just, LinkedIn messages. That's all we've done. We've engaged with each other's LinkedIn posts. We've sent each other a few, one-to-one messages, but I finally get her in the flesh, well, as close to the flesh as I can be. So without further ado, get ready for Hilary.
Hello.
Hilary. Hi.
Hi. That's like, you're the ultimate hype woman, aren't you?
I'm really happy that you say that, because all my guests have actually said that they enjoy the intros that I give them. And I'm like, but I'm literally just talking about you. Like, that's the truth. I didn't make anything up. Like, that is actually you. But sometimes it's really nice for people to hear it, like you probably haven't heard someone say that before.
No, I don't think you do. Is that you don't always get that kind of feedback, or you do, but I'm normally like,
Yeah.
thanks. I don't really know what to say, making me blush.
I know. And I actually said to my husband this morning, whilst we were having our porridge and espresso, I said, Matt, I think I suffer with self-confidence issues. And he turns around and was like, who? You? Like, you suffer with self. I was like, all right, mate. I was like, yes, I do. Because when someone says, Roz, I don't know what instigated me to say this was a real situation. I got a text from someone and they said, they genuinely said, oh my God, I cringe having to share this, but they said, Roz, you blew me away on stage. Your presentation was amazing. And I was like, why do I get the feeling that that's an exaggeration? Isn't that weird? I'm like, why are they exaggerating? Like, why are they saying that?
I think imposter syndrome is massive for especially a lot of women in industry across the board. So I think it's not necessarily a confidence thing. It's just that kind of a little bit of self-doubts occasionally that creep in. You just have to keep them at bay, don't you? Those little negative thoughts.
Yes, and it helps to talk about them. I know when I said it out loud, because I know, especially after the Tina Turner post, I can't really go out there saying I suffer with self-confidence issues like that. That cannot go in the same sentence, but it just goes to show that, a lot of people maybe think, Hilary, that because you and I post a lot and we put ourselves out there, that they think like we own it, we don't have doubts, we don't have, negative feelings or anything. How do you feel about that?
Oh my God, I completely agree. Like, I think posting, especially like if you're actively posting on LinkedIn, sometimes you're putting it is that whole difference of being personal and private. Like you have private things that you do, but there are personal things you can share. But I think sometimes it's easy to kind of that line can sometimes get a bit blurred, and it's like you have to remember, like, actually personal's fine, private is private, and it's just keeping that boundary in place, I guess. But yeah, I definitely agree. Like I've done some random. I mean, I've dressed as a man on as a full builder in like makeup. So like I have done all sorts of random things. And a lot of the time I think, oh, how is this? You start to get in your own head a bit and think, oh, how is this going to be received? But I think my biggest thing that I try and remember is just post as if no one's watching. Post as if you don't actually care. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you get one like or like 0 likes. Just post and just get it done, and then worry about it later.
Oh, Hilary, I could talk about this 4 days about posting for the sake of, likes and, versus posting because you are genuinely enjoying yourself. So yeah, I completely back you up on that. But there are so many layers to today that I want to get through. So you inject a lot of creativity into your posts. You've got an uncorporate approach, which I want to talk about. You also are a co-founder of the Women's Networking Club in collaboration with Dementia Support. Yeah. Which brings me on to today's quote that I wanted to share with you, which is, again, I found it through material that I was reading. So I actually apologize for not being able to credit this particular person. Obviously, when you read so much, you're like, I actually can't remember where I got it from. But the quote is, 1 in 5 people with mental health problems are in debt.
Yeah.
What does that feel like to you? Is that evident? Have you seen that?
I think, obviously we don't work with individuals. We're a brokerage for businesses. But it doesn't surprise me that people who are struggling with their mental health, it kind of, it's a very stressful time for business owners. Current, the economy's, the situation, the, cost of living crisis. I think that is very stressful for a lot of people. And I think that mental well-being kind of goes hand in hand. So it doesn't surprise me that figure. It's not acceptable. I don't think it's good. I think more should be done to support people who are struggling, and obviously in crisis and whatnot. But I think the big thing that comes back to is responsible lending, because that is a massive issue that I think gets probably brought up quite a lot within the finance industry. I know that from our point of view as in Winchester Corporate Finance, we will quite often say to someone, actually, no, you need, where you are is the best place for you. You don't need to refinance. Or effectively, sometimes like, actually, you've gone past this point. Getting a loan is not going to be a good thing, a good time for you where you are in your business. Actually, you might need to look down the insolvency road. Or I think it's just being honest and transparent with where that business is at an individual point in its journey as such, and whether you want to get involved with any sort of debt at that time. It's not always. A lot of the people that come to us are generally in their growth phase anyway, so they're not kind of impacted negatively by debt. But obviously, at times we do get some people who come to us at different points, and you have to be kind of have that open and honest discussion with them to see if it is the right thing for them.
That's the key, really. That quote is without much context. 1 in 5 people with mental health issues are in debt. Now, what does that mean? Is it because they came out of employment? Is that because they were irresponsible with money? Was that because they needed the money for their care and they just couldn't catch up in time? There's so many variables to this, but as you quite rightly mentioned, it is about just assessing the situation, and sometimes it's really hard to hear the truth and to swallow that very bitter pill that potentially now is not the time that you can move. Now is not the time for you to get on the property ladder. Actually, you have to stay where you are in order to keep you sane and to keep you calm, because adding that extra added stress of having a mortgage or the whole process of it might actually make you worse. So it is about taking control and ownership of your current situation without affecting yourself, too much for the future.
Yeah. And I think also a big way that we work is we do a lot of business reviews. So we'll look at a business as a whole and see what position they're at. And actually, sometimes we can say to them, look, you're not going to get a top tier lender. You're further down. But if you do X, Y, and Z in 6 months' time, and we can come back to it, you can get that top tier 1 and be in a much better position. So it's just, again, it's about helping and educating. That's a big thing, a big part of what I kind of try and do. And I guess that's why I'm so vocal about it, because I genuinely care so much about providing that support. When you've come from the business community, you don't always, it can sometimes be a bit all consuming. Your business, especially if you're a sole trader or you're there, taking the majority of the responsibility, you're like, you eat, sleep, repeat, just work. And it's sometimes quite a lonely existence. So again, I think having someone that's just going to fight your corner the whole way and be there open and honestly for you makes all the difference.
Yeah, I love that, Hilary. So on to you then. I know what you're passionate about. I know where your values are. How do you find that sense of purpose with your content on social media and balancing that corporate message for Winchester Corporate Finance and your personal message?
Well, that's a big question. So I guess I guess my drive is definitely from my background. Being in business and dealing with lots of different factors has meant that I've come from that position, and I know how hard it is. So a lot of what I write about is sometimes about what I've struggled with and overcome within my own career and how I've kind of managed it. But in terms of corporate, I'm not corporate. I can't claim to be. I'd love. My corporate dreams were crippled when I came in and they told me that we have kind of more of a dress down policy. I was like, oh, I'm not going to get to wear a power suit. But the side that I kind of get is, I think it's that whole personable thing. And I'm used to building relationships. When I've got a 20-year career in the beauty industry, that one-to-one, that is the normal for me. I'm used to making other people feel comfortable. And I guess that I just take all of that kind of skill that I've learned how to do and I put it forward. But, no one can claim that business finance is the most interesting topic. Most of the time, people don't want to talk about bridging loans or invoice finance. It doesn't seem like the most glitz and glam kind of area to entice people in. But I think if you can bring in that human element and just get talking about the conversation. I mean, debt is a big one for me. I think the connotations around it are so negative with, you know, society as a whole, that people, especially British people, don't want to open up and have those conversations about money and saving money and getting value for money. And I think they're conversations that definitely need to be had. So I think it's something that I'm passionate about. I'm just passionate for pushing forward with, and I hope I kind of get the balance, but at the same time, I'm not going to try and be something that I'm not.
I love that. So talk us through what kind of topics we would typically discover on your profile. Like, if we were to follow you, what do you typically talk about?
I try and talk about business finance as much as possible, but of course, I do tend to be out and about. So I do a lot of the way that my job role kind of works is I do a lot of networking. So and again, like with the Corporate Ladies Club or my Women in Finance events, I do run those. I'm quite passionate about bringing people together. So I do talk about that. And obviously I do talk about individual products. So things like invoice finance or merchant cash advance, I will talk about those and kind of go into them a little bit more depth, because I don't always think that they are understood. I mean, I think sometimes people hear the term finance and it just kind of, they glaze over, the interest is lost, and they're just like, oh, I don't know what that means. And the amount of people I've had conversations, they're like, I don't really understand what business finance is. And it's like, yeah, I get that, because they're just products effectively, but they're not necessarily discussed in more depth than this. And I think also the language that people use, is so many acronyms. I had to like learn so much when I first started. So yeah, I talk about that, talk about individual products and kind of explain them, talk about sort of the networking opportunities. And then I also talk about the sort of, I suppose, my day to day, like my kids will, you know, sometimes come out with some really funny things and I'll talk about those, or I'll make jokes. I love a pun. So language is always something that I've really enjoyed. And I think that kind of comes through in some of the things that I write about. But yeah, and I'll talk about marketing, of course, because that's, I guess, the backbone when you've done it for yourself. Obviously, this is my first role that I've had where I've actually had to market for someone else as such, but I kind of know the principles of what I'm supposed to be doing. So I kind of do discuss that and try and provide help, I guess, for people just starting out or other business owners that might think, oh, how can I go about doing that? Yeah.
What advice would you give to a woman listening right now who doesn't necessarily have her own business, maybe is working and still wants to find her own voice on social media? How can they find their voice with content without stepping on the employer's toes, but still just having their own identity?
That I think is quite tricky, because it depends on the employer. Some businesses are quite clear cut. You know, I've met other women in industry who work for banks or lenders, and they're like, no, they do not, across the board, they do not want us posting on social media. And I kind of get that. I don't think it's right. I think, you know, having a personal brand should not be feared. If anything, I think it's opened up far more opportunities for like, certainly for me, for Winchester Corporate Finance, the doors have been opened because of it. But I think, I guess you just have to have that conversation with your line manager maybe, and see how open they are to that situation. And then I think generally I'd say just go for it. I mean, you have to be mindful. You have to be mindful about how you are being perceived. I do a lot of testing. So I test my content, and the varies from like post length to subject. And I kind of stick to the 80-20 rule. So 20% of it will be about like business finance and Winchester, but then the 80% of it is just what I'm doing on the daily. And I guess it's just, you know, you have to kind of also think, why are you posting? Because, you know, it's all fair and well having an audience of 100,000 followers, but what are you going to do with it? There needs to be a reason for it. There's no point to it if you're just going to do it for likes and validation. There has to be kind of a reason why you're doing it. So for me, I wasn't on LinkedIn. I knew I needed to be on LinkedIn. This is where we connect with a lot of the businesses that we work with. And my boss was like, you really need to be on LinkedIn. So then I was like, well, I can't, at that point, I was like, I don't know anything about business finance. So the only thing I can talk about is what I'm doing, how I'm finding it, my own experiences. And I guess if you are working for a good business, they shouldn't have anything to fear. If their work culture is good, they shouldn't be fearing what you're going to say about them. My boss does not check or see my posts. He doesn't, he'll like them, but it's normally he'll be like, "What on earth were you going on about today?" Or he'll find something funny. But it's that thing of he does not fear what I'm going to say, because he knows that I am proud to work for Winchester Corporate Finance. I really value their work ethic and how much support I get, and he knows that that's all I'm going to shout from the rooftops. If you're an employer that is just not doing the right thing, that's when you should be worried. And that's all I'd have to say, is check in, obviously make sure you're not going to tread on any toes, and then just go for it and talk about what your own experience of what you're doing.
Boom. That is definitely the top tip that ends all top tips when it comes to really understanding your employer and the culture within that's ingrained, that's stitched into the business. Because if you are afraid of what your employees might say out there, then what are you actually saying in there? Like inside behind closed doors, what is going on that you are so afraid of letting your colleagues talk about? So I think, yes, people have to take a very good look. Businesses have to take a very good look at what the culture is all about, what they are preaching and teaching internally that is not worth sharing. So why aren't you doing something worth sharing, right? So I've seen a lot of listeners sometimes talk to me offline and say, "Oh, but I work for, when I'm on my own, I'll talk about my passion for children's charities." And I'm like, why can't you talk about children's charities whilst you're also working in this particular place? Because you're not selling, something new. Like, let's say, I don't know, I want to give a really silly example. Like, okay, let's say you work for a bakery, right? It's not like you're posting about your own cupcakes and what you're selling and, diverting the traffic away from your existing. Do you see what I mean? I know it sounds really silly, but it's like, and even so, even in that element, what if you were selling cupcakes and you were really good at decorating cupcakes, but you actually had them in the bakery as well? So that's you were attracting, your audience towards your business, but actually still benefiting your employer. So yeah, there are fine lines, but sometimes it might just be talking about something you're passionate about, like your work, the work that you do with women in business and the collaboration with dementia support. That's got nothing to do with corporate finance or asset finance or bridging loans. That's just something that Hilary Lewis is truly passionate about. So we get to know the person behind the business. We know who we're working with. So that's my little cupcake example. If you can apply that to your own business and jobs out there, I hope that made sense. But I think I wanted to bring Hilary on the show as a brilliant example of someone who has never been in the industry and suddenly made a name for herself within just a really short space of time. Within 14 months, Hilary, it really does stand out, and the content does stand out. So the other thing before we come to an end that I really wanted to ask you about, Hilary, that I'd love for you to share is, how else do you think we can all reshape the view of the industry, break barriers, and really make meaningful connections? Because you bring a different perspective into the industry. Just like myself, I didn't start out in financial services, and I think people like you and I help the industry to evolve. So what more would you like to see? How else can we break? So just to recap the question, how can we reshape the industry, bring a fresh perspective, break barriers, and make more meaningful connections?
I think from what I've seen, I would definitely say, obviously there needs to be more diversity, there needs to be more inclusion. I think it's just bringing in that fresh blood, not having like the old boys club at the top. I think there's like Gen Z, I think, are fantastic for bringing in fresh ideas, utilizing what is available to you, things like LinkedIn, social media, TikTok. I think, you just need to repackage it a bit and put it out there for the people who are actually using it. There's no point. The whole point with marketing is it's customer focused. If you're constantly worrying about, this is what we've done in the past and this is our standard. You're not actually thinking about the businesses that you're helping or you're trying to help. And if you're customer focused, then you're going to be at least aiming everything at the right people. It might be very different, it might be completely left field from the way you've always done it, but the people that you are using your products, they're the ones that matter. It's not about us, it's always about them.
Yeah, I love that, Hilary. Really appreciate it. And I think the biggest thing for me there is number one, first and foremost, is the next generation. How can we bring the next generation into financial services? Because they come with a whole new approach, a different perspective. They come with that social media and that technically minded, that technology minded approach to giving advice and managing customers. So we definitely need more of that. We also need to amplify a lot more. I know we're still having the conversation about boys club, women, equality, but we're not having enough of the conversation. I'm starting to see more of it now about diversity. I actually attended a training this week on LGBTQAI. Sorry, I have to remember all the letters. So I just literally still learning and ask everybody to just be patient with me and compassionate about what it means for someone who, like, I've always felt like I've been inclusive naturally.
Yeah.
But actually, there are some subtleties that we do. Like, for example, when I do a lot of public speaking, like a subtle change, instead of coming onto the stage and saying, ladies and gentlemen, like instead of saying that, changing that language, because that doesn't include everybody in the audience. I'm assuming that there's just ladies and gentlemen, and it's just these subtle things, and coming on the stage and saying, hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Just something different. So have you had any training on that side of things? Or
no, I'm quite mindful of it. I do try. I think it's sometimes it's a generational thing. I'm an older woman. I'm nearly 40. I hope that my kids, things like that, it will just come naturally to them, or a lot more naturally. But I, like you, I feel like I'm learning all the time, and thank God, for TikTok and all the stuff that's constantly like that you can pick up tips like that so quickly. And I think as well, I live in a small village. It's not something that I necessarily interact with on a daily basis. So I think when you do live in if you've got a diverse environment around you, you become more aware. But I think sometimes you can be in your little bubble and not see that change does need to be made and people do need to do more. And I'm conscious that I want to make sure that I'm being the best version of myself, to include everyone and be diverse, and not doing something because, like the greenwashing type thing of just ticking a box to say, oh yeah, I could do that. I think you have to be self-aware.
Yes, and that's what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be more self-aware. I'm also hoping that I meet more and more people who can help me embrace this and help me understand it better. I'm trying to also see how, as a business, I can be more vocally embracive. So I might be embracing people and not judging them for who they are, but I'm not proactive about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, how can I bring more diversity into my business? And I do have diversity on different levels, from, I have both men and women working for me, working on projects. I have a mixture of abilities. So, some might struggle with dyslexia, some might struggle with mental health. So I've also, as an employee, I've got to manage that as well, which has not been easy, because when do we ever get taught how to manage someone with mental health? Or when do we get taught how to delegate work to people that have got dyslexia? Like, I don't know how to do that. I'm just learning as I go. And that's really challenging, because you might end up alienating that person before you even got a chance to make yourself, I don't want to hurt anyone, but I'm there just trying to understand them. And maybe they're not forthcoming in telling me that they've got a particular preference or disability. And I'm just, I'm there like, wow, they're picking up the phone. And they're like, I don't like telephone conversations. And I'm like, okay, yes, I'm trying to embrace that.
navigating it, isn't it? I think there are some fantastic champions on LinkedIn, which who I do follow. You know, people like I think it's Ellie Middleton, Luke Manton, who are just really flying the flag for different causes. And I think they have taught me more about how to be self-aware and how to include more. And that has made a massive difference. And I definitely think if you can pick up, you know, even the subtle little tips and hints, it does to help. But I do think it's hard. I think it's hard to navigate. And I would hate to upset someone or offend someone. And sometimes you just don't know if the way you're putting something across is the right way, or if it's going to be interpreted in a negative way. You have to, it's difficult, I think.
Yeah, I had a PA actually that had Tourette's.
Yeah.
And we got we got on brilliantly well. We understood each other's way of communication. We did the work that we had to do. You know, it was a short-lived for that. It just served a purpose. You know, wasn't in a position to hire someone full time, but yeah, we got the job done. Yes, at the beginning there was a few things that I had to get used to, but you know, like I said, I'm always learning. I never, mean to hurt anyone intentionally. So yeah, I'm just, as we all are, we're just learning. So yeah, I'm embracing it. Like I said, I attended a training to embrace more, and especially because right now it's June, right? So it's Pride Month.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, and I'm always trying to see what ways I can learn. So yeah, anyone out there who can suggest or recommend anything, I'd be delighted to hear from you. So yeah, thank you very much on that. And Hilary, thank you for all your comments and for sharing just the truest part of yourself. Like, I know it's really hard to just be yourself. I know that sounds crazy, but you do put it all out there, and you do show us how beneficial and positive it can be to play your own part and to be yourself. What last words would you have to the viewers who maybe are watching your journey and fear doing it themselves, or want to boost their confidence in being more themselves on social media? What would you say to them?
I would say you don't have to be the best person. I am not the best marketer. I am not the best business finance knowledgeable person. I am just documenting my experiences because they are my own, and no one can beat that because they're your experiences. They can't take them away from you. So I think it's always that thing of a lot of people worry about they don't have anything to say, or they're not important, or why would anyone care? Well, that doesn't matter because they're your experiences, and no one else is going to have those. So that's what will set you apart from everyone else.
I absolutely 100% back that up. That I always say I'm only posting for myself. I literally love, I know it sounds really self-glorifying, but it shouldn't be coming across that way at all. What I'm saying is I post, and I love looking at my own posts as like my own digital diary. I like looking back and being like, oh, that's what I did. Oh, I remember that. Like, who doesn't like going back through their Instagram and looking at their holiday snaps or their wedding pictures and things like that? So I love looking back on my posts as a diary, like looking back on things that I did, things that I achieved. So yeah, so there you have it, guys. Not just from myself, but from Hilary, who has been there, done it, and is still learning, still embracing it. I love the fact that she's admitted, I'm not the best marketer, I'm not the best, or most knowledgeable person on business finance. I'm sure Winchester Corporate Finance would like to disagree with that, but and I'm sure you do know more than you think you know. But it just goes to show that with what you know and who you are, that is all that people want to see. That's, you don't have to be boastful or the best, or, you don't need to be award winning. You just need to be yourself. So if you want to follow Hilary, in the show notes, there will be all the links to her social media. You can check out her journey. You can be inspired by her posts, which are entertaining to say the least at times. So that's really, really good, Hilary. So thank you again so much for being on the show.
No, it's my pleasure. I've absolutely loved it. Thank you for having me.